Welcome everyone back to Tuesday Talks. This week is supply and demand. Hope you had a great long weekend. We're so glad that you could join us today. So this is the weekly online gathering where we share industry insights, learn about adapting to the ever-changing landscape of live events and festivals. And I'm your guest host this week for Supply and Demand. I'm Kyle Sipkens. This is a series of panel discussions with suppliers representing different areas of the festival and events industry to discover what you'll need to know when planning your 2021 and 2022 events, and how we can work together to rebuild Ontario's diverse festival landscape. And now that we're fully into 2022, I need to update that intro so that it gets rid of the previous year. But this is what happens after a long weekend. We're going to introduce our guest host this week in just a moment. But before that, a little bit of housekeeping. This will be recorded today, just so you know. And if you do have any questions at all during the talk today, we do want this to be an open conversation. So please feel free to either raise your hand. The button is there at the bottom in the reactions. You'll see it there, or type your question into the chat and we'll try to get to it as we go, because we do want you to be part of the conversation and to answer any questions that we can, because I'm sure other people have a similar question as well. So this week, what we're going to be looking at is how to future-proof your festival and event. And I'm very excited to introduce today's guest, Ann Barker. Ann, welcome. So glad you could join us. And I'm going to have you introduce yourself because you can do it better than I can.
Thank you, Kyle, so much. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Welcome. I'm very excited to be part of Tuesday Talks. This is a difficult time we're all experiencing, and I just want to give you a little bit of background about myself. So I've been in this industry more years than I can count, 35 plus I think now, and I started when I was 2, and it's going really well, but we're all trying to adapt and change to our new landscape. And I was recently at OAS, and the keynote speaker was about adapting and learning about yourself and how you adapt. And it was actually very insightful, because I think that it's something we all need to think about now, because trying to navigate this future, we have to think about how we are going to adapt as individuals, how our organization is going to adapt. I'm going to bring to you some insight I've discovered and some conversation about your ticketing system. And that's my jam thing is ticketing. And I get very excited about it. So if I get, Debbie has to remind me not to hit my table because I get all excited about what we're doing. Anyway, so welcome everybody. Jay is going to run the presentation, but I do want this to be a conversation. So if you have questions or you have comments or you have thoughts and suggestions, please put it in the chat or raise your hand, because I'd love to hear from you as we go along. So starting with future-proofing your festival or event, let's start the presentation. So the current situation, what are you doing now? Are you just selling tickets at the gate? Have you had an online system? Have you done some pre-sales? Are you selling in your community? What is it you're actually doing? Are you collecting data? And I think that's one of the key things that we need to think about now in the future is, what is it that we know about our customer? How have our customers changed? How are we going to continue to contact them? If we have things that we need to tell them, example, the event is canceled or it's postponed or rescheduled, do we have that information to share with them? So things to think about: how efficient is your current process? How cost effective is it? Do you have the support that you need? I know what we've learned during these times is when the cancellations started happening and people were being furloughed or working from home, they didn't have the resources the organization previously had. So having support and help from their ticketing system really made a difference. And then, so what has to change now and what has changed? Those are things to think about and discuss. So does anybody have anything they'd like to comment on now as far as what they currently are doing and where they think they're going to need to go? And I'm going to have Kyle be the moderator of this.
Yeah, so I'm just checking through. We don't have any questions in the chat yet. We'll give people a minute. I don't see any hands popping up.
Okay.
That's
And as I said, I want this to be a conversation. So please don't hesitate to say what you're thinking and what you're currently doing and what you would like to start doing. So as I said, the changes is now. You want to make sure that you're capitalizing on what the consumer has been doing for the last 2.5 years. They have been purchasing online. They have been communicating through chat services as opposed to actually speaking to someone in person. So capitalizing on that, the new way that people are behaving is really important, I believe, because this is the time to make your changes. You want to really investigate in advanced sales, having electronic ticketing as opposed to hard paper tickets. You want to be able to communicate rapidly with your audience. So do you have that information to do so? You want to be able to reach out to new customers and to find new volunteers, because the other thing we've discovered is that the volunteer base that used to exist may not now. People have found other ways to spend their time, so they may not be as invested in your event as they once were, because now they found other things to fill their time. And the other thing is, this is the time to change your pricing. So there is a cost to doing business, and with new procedures that you must have in place, for example, if you have to have hand sanitizers everywhere or everything like that. But also your ticketing system may have a cost now that you can incorporate in your price.
Oh, I think Dave's got his hand up there.
Yeah, and I was wondering, the time for change is now. Have you seen any major changes to boilerplates, from insurance companies that this is excluded, or, with everything we've been through?
That has been
time to update that.
Yeah, that has been a real challenge. In fact, I was speaking with a new client on Friday, and they are actually putting their 2022 events on hold because they just don't have the insurance coverage that would be required, and they just aren't prepared to take on the risk this year. So they want to wait another year and not do the big headliner shows that they have previously done. They might do some smaller things, but they just don't have the ability to do the larger ones because they can't afford it. And that's totally understandable. And I think that the insurance companies, that's been a conversation for the last 6 months as to what people are going to use and what is actually covered. It's not my thing, but that's been the conversation that I've heard.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the other thing to think about is where your money, as a ticketing system, where your money is being treasured, and ensuring that you have the ability to refund your customers should that be necessary, and you have access to those funds. So that's another thing that has to be considered. So the thing to think about too is often people say, well, I have a free event. I don't need ticketing. But this is where your data can be so valuable to you. So paid or free, ticketing is important. And selling tickets is one of the most crucial steps in the event planning process, and it's often overlooked. You need to be able to develop relationships with your customers and be able to distribute marketing materials and messages. And do you have a way to do that is also cost effective to you, and both in time and in dollars? In my experience, often the ticketing system or the box office is the last thing people consider, yet it's one of the first experiences that your customer has with your event. We've done a number of events where we get there and they go, oh yeah, we forgot that we had to set up a gate and where we were actually going to set you up to sell tickets or to do access control. I worked at Casino Rama for a number of years, and they forgot about the box office 4 times because they were under renovations. And the first year was, oh yes, we're building a new entertainment center. This is many, many, many years ago. And they thought, yeah, we were going to have a box office once the entertainment center's built, but it was still under construction, and they wanted to go on sale 4 months prior to the actual completion of the center. And so we worked out a code check for a number of months. And I'm not very tall, but my assistant was very tall. And so we had to keep warning her, don't hit your head, because of the wheelie deals around. So having a box office, no matter your size of your business, people often forget it. So that's something to think about, not only the physical location of it, but how it's actually going to function.
Well, and that's actually, it's a really important point, because when that's really the first interaction that your attendee or your customer is going to have with your event, that's essentially going to be the customer service. It's going to be, that's the impression of what they can expect on site. So, I mean, I'm sure even, not just where the box office is situated, but where does the lineup go? Like, what happens if it's backed up? What happens if you have timed entry? How visible is it? Like, I don't know, like, can you comment on maybe with an example of something that you saw that you had to troubleshoot on site?
Many of those events. And the other thing to consider is weather. So it doesn't necessarily mean inclement weather where it's rain. It can be super hot. So what do you have to protect those customers who are waiting, and you're worried about heat stroke, or how does your line, where is it, what's the direction of it, and does it interfere perhaps with cars coming in? We've had those experiences. We were doing an event in Midland one time, and that was a huge issue because they didn't know where they were having a shuttle bringing people to the site, which was great, but the drop off and where the lineup was the same location. And people, there was a little bit of conflict about, you're entering our line, you have to go way back to get to the back of it, as opposed to right now in the middle of it, and things like that. And are you, so we started scanning tickets in the line before they could actually enter. So at least, we had some preemptive things done so that people could walk in really fast once those gates opened. We had another circumstance when we were out in Canmore where they have to pipe in. It's a folk festival, and they pipe in the customers, and then they go find their spot and they set up their tarp, and then they're free to leave until the event actually starts. Well, they opened the gates, and it was a mass exodus to get their tarp set up, and the poor little piper guy was, surrounded by people, and it's like, no, you have to follow the piper. You can't go ahead of the piper. So those kinds of things. I mean, that wasn't so much of the ticketing system issue, but it was about how to organize the crowd. And so, telling people as we're scanning their tickets or wristbanding them, this is the process, became, the job of the ticket takers, so that the customers knew what to do next.
Well, if there's one rule that we know in the festival world, it's the piper always goes first.
Yes.
They never put them at the back of the parade.
No.
Well, yeah, or even just in terms of visibility, like if you have multiple booths set up, can you see all of them? Do you know which, like, is it visible which one you should go to if you have advanced tickets, if you're buying it at the gate? Yeah.
Signage, again, is very important. However, we've all learned that customers don't necessarily read things.
They don't.
No. So one of the things that we've worked with events on is having a greeter person. And often, it's a volunteer who's really in touch with the community, knows not only the event really well, but knows the surrounding area very well. So they're a great person to be an ambassador for the town, or what there is to do and where to direct people. And that sometimes people aren't as technical savvy as perhaps they could be at the gate. So this is a great position for that person, because they're wonderful knowledge that they have of not only the event, but the community. And they're a great greeter. And they're, someone who can say, if you have tickets, this is where you're going to go. If you need to purchase, this is where you're going to go. If you're you're here to pick up something. This is, that location. If you want to grab a cup of coffee, this is this is our local coffee brewer. All those kinds of things are really important. Often selling programs too at the same time, or distributing that kind of information works really well.
I absolutely agree. And it's great to just have that friendly face again, to be the first impression when you arrive on site. I know of one festival where the line was just so long that it was an opportunity to jump up on the stilts and start entertaining the line. The festival organizers also had the foresight to think to put some entertainment out there as well, so that no matter what, if you're waiting in line with the timed entry, you're still getting a festival experience. But would you think that or would you say that a volunteer or a staff member is really best equipped for handling that actual ticketing situation though, inside the booth? Like should that be, as a volunteer, someone ready to jump into that role?
Sometimes, sometimes yes, and sometimes, in my opinion, having a paid person is valuable in the sense that this is their job. I've been in an event where we had volunteers running the box office, and they decided right as the gate opened that they were not going to do the job, and they walked off. And so it's like, okay, well, I'll jump in, or, we'll figure this out. And, the idea was that I was there as a support person, not necessarily working. And, the plan was that there would be, 3 other people, and they left, and it was me. So, that sense of value of what the box office is bringing, it hit home that, having dedicated paid people can really matter, because, it was, if I hadn't been there, I don't know what they would have done, because they wouldn't have had anybody managing the box office at that moment.
Well, and I think that's a perfect segue to your next slide as well, as talking about the importance of partnerships and suppliers.
Yes.
So I'll let you get to that.
Well, and that's the thing, is that, when you hire a company, whether it's, Kyle on his stilts, or, myself helping you with your box office, we're there to support you, and we are your partners. And recognizing that value is I think really important for an event organizer. Yes, it's a business, and people are, there to make money and to succeed, but your true partners are invested in what you're doing. And if you're not successful, they're not successful. And I think that recognizing that partnership is a really important aspect of an event organizer. And, as I said, when you're buying a ticket, that's your first experience. And what most suppliers and vendors want is a good customer experience, because if your customer's happy, everybody's happy. And imagining what that journey for that customer is really important. So from the moment they hear about your event, that starts their journey. And if, the traffic is crappy getting there, or there aren't enough porta potties, or, if there's a huge lineup and if the process is not efficient, all of that goes to their overall experience. And you can have the best headliner and present the best show, but if that experience from the start to finish isn't great, then that will taint your customer. And, we want to keep returning customers. It's easier to retain a customer than it is to acquire a new one.
Which it's also very important. Like I know typically with conferences, for instance, when if you're setting up a booth or planning a marketing activation, you think about what the journey is of that person coming through, where typically their first point of entry is, and hitting all the points of information, or all the points you want them to hit before exiting the activation. So, that might be going through different roles, or hitting different items. On a festival site, there could be any number of pathways that people take, but making sure that you those landmark things that people are going to hit. They're going to hit the box office. They're going to hit probably a headline event. They're likely going to hit food vendors, washrooms, making sure that all those pathways are clear and all those experiences are clear right to when they exit, how they exit. I know one festival that I work with, parking after fireworks has always been, it can be a frustrating thing when everyone's trying to leave at once. So we've found a way to make that fun and actually a really positive experience as people leave, because that's their last impression before the next year. Mm-hmm. And another reason why those having those suppliers on hand who are there to make it work. I mean, I'm sure that we all can remember an event where we've hit inclement weather, and some of us have been there all holding down tents. No matter what it is that you were there to do, we're all there together. Mm-hmm. I think Rob has a question here. Can you comment on change management and ways to evolve incrementally to new approaches to ticketing, online ticketing or online interactions, etc., particularly for events that have been going for many years, doing things generally the same way? So I think this is something that you already started to talk about as now being a good time to change. So maybe somebody has done, I think what Rob's asking is, maybe people have done things by physical tickets for a number of years.
Well, I think the thing to think about is your customer is changing, and you have to adapt to that change as well. The way you've always done it may not be the way that's going to work now. So I think you sort of start from, what is it we're hoping to achieve and how we're going to work backwards now. How are we going to get there? So if you've always sold tickets at the gate, how can you start educating the ticket buyer that, what, now we require it, or now we're doing advanced sales? So one of the questions that I'm going to call on Peter, it's one of the last slides I have, but Peter from the Toronto Garlic Festival had asked about, we have a really low ticket price. It's $5. And how are we going to move into this, new digital age? The thing would be is if your ticket price is, for example, in Peter's case, $5, so now that becomes your advance price, and you need to move to the gate price to being, $10 or $15, something it's a greater amount. So, for example, if you want to start with what you actually need to get out of the event, that's your starting point, and then you move your pricing up from there. So if you need to get $20 a person, then that's your early pricing, or that's your online pricing, and then your gate pricing has to be, in my opinion, significant enough to make people want to buy in advance. So changing the way you think about how you're facilitating stuff really needs to be your first starting point, and then move backwards from there. So if you had management changes, and this is one of the values of having, a ticketing system that can be a partner to you, that, they have some resources, whether it's a call center or whether it's, account managers or other people to assist you when you have had a management change. So now you can use, that team as part of your team to move forward. Is that answering the question you've asked?
Yeah, Rob's giving a thumbs up.
Okay. And I think the other thing is, is thinking outside of the box in the sense of imagining all the, back to that customer experience, the journey, what could go wrong in being, I always think of the henny penny, the sky is falling. Let's think of all the things that I can think of now that might impact this event or this process. And then when you've sort of worked through those scenarios, what happens on event day, or, those are now new things, but you've already solved so many problems in advance. So, being worst case scenario person often helps, because you think about, okay, so how are we going to handle it if, this happens? Because, you've already thought through that policy and those processes in advance, as opposed to, sort of turning a blind eye and just being reactionary as opposed to proactive.
Well, and I think that's something that the past 2 years has taught us is the importance of having those, emergency preparedness plans, or, what happens if we have to refund everyone's tickets. It's something that may have not been, it may have been important to have an idea of, but now it's what happens if things turn on a dime.
Right.
And
the same thing with pricing too. Sorry, Kyle, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No.
I was going to say with pricing though, like when generally what happens is you return the entire purchase that the customer made. Well, now as a company, we now have more cancellation policies than we've ever had. And it's not because we're trying to be greedy or anything. It's just we need to cover our costs as everybody does. And we realized, that extra work has a cost to it, that we're doing on behalf of our clients. So putting up that information to your customer from the get-go too, that, there is an administration fee should something happen with the event. If people know about it in advance, they're okay with it. It's when they're hit with it after the fact that they're not okay with it. Ticket insurance is another thing. If you want to go down that route so that your customer has that feeling of, they're quote safe and that they know that they're going to get their money back. But stating, from the beginning that, should something happen, this is our policy, thinking about those things too.
And just building on that question as well, for an organization that maybe has done physical tickets, and at any given time, there may be pockets of tickets in many different places and not sure what's out there, how many are actually sold, how many to expect. What are some of the advantages then to switching to online ticketing and building on that as well? What would you say to an organization that is hesitant to change to from a physical ticket to an online ticket?
I guess my first question to that organization is, how did you handle things, when March 2020 happened and you had tickets out there? Did you, we're experiencing even today, we have a couple clients that are using us as a ticketing system, but they're not putting their sales into what we call an account with customer data. And, they had a number of, it's a hockey team. So they had a number of games that couldn't be played, that were played, but without fans. And then with capacity restrictions, the people who had purchased individual tickets were not able to attend. But because they hadn't captured data, those customers, unless, they happened to see it on social media or were on the team's website, they didn't know they weren't able to attend. So, even now there are people who have systems who are not utilizing the way it's designed to work so that you are capturing that data and you do know who they are. And, you don't want to alienate that customer because they don't know the information. So how are they being communicated with? I think that's the biggest thing, is that when you've printed tickets and you have them sold in all different locations, you don't know who's purchased them and you don't have a way to contact them. So data is king. You have to remember that and keep thinking about how am I learning who my customer is and how am I able to communicate with them?
Yeah. Well, and I think as well, like, things have really changed over the past 2 years. The things that have been asked of us, having to switch to QR codes, using our phone a lot more for digital. Now you go to a restaurant and you scan a QR code and look at the menu on your phone. People where we may have been worried that, what if someone doesn't have this technology? Now, most people may have access to that technology and may be practiced at using it. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say the comment we often hear is, we have a very old clientele, quote old, who, are not, they don't like to go online. Well, I can tell you now they do, and they are. And I'm quite certain they've, bought from Amazon for their grandchildren. All those things, it's not an argument anymore. Yes, there are people who do maybe struggle or maybe do not have the technology, but there's someone in their family who does, and I'm quite certain they'll help them. But for Ticketpro, for example, we do have a call center. So if someone has a question or, is not sure what they're doing, there's an actual number to call to get a person to help them.
Mm-hmm.
But most organizations have chat or have some type of support.
Mm-hmm. And ultimately, people do have the opportunity to print out a ticket as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's Deb, did you have a question?
I did.
Okay.
I just wanted to say, we've been using a ticketing system for for a long time now. And I have to say, for the conference, for these Tuesday talks, for anything that we're introducing to our patronage, our members, our industry, it's a relief for me that I have a partner. I really do look at all our suppliers as a partner to make a successful conference and to make a successful Tuesday talks. And I don't know if I ever really, before I came to FEO, I'm not really sure I was a buyer, and I'm not sure that I really looked at our industry or suppliers as partners in crime all the time. And so I just find it relieves me of stress on site because I know I have a partner helping me with that particular area. And so I just wanted to put that in there that it really does help to develop that with somebody. And even if there is a cost to it, even if it's $5 to the people who are coming, it's the stress, it's just relief. That's all I can say. So just something to think about.
And just to that point, Debbie, for me, having been on site at a number of things, that experience of, most customers have the same question over and over and over again, anticipating what that might be. You really can't put a dollar value on that experience and that expertise that's helping you with your event, because the person who's the front-facing person at the box office, what people are going to want to know about. So you can preempt that conversation with the details right away. When I was working at the casino, I used to play the game every time with the person walking up. If, whether they were will call, for example, I have already sorted all the will call and decide who that person was before they got there. And that was the little game I played. It's like, oh, you must be Mr. Smith. And they'd look at me and go, how did you know that? It's like, you just kind of get a feel of who people are and what they, or, oh, I think you'd really like to sit in the tiered seating. I don't think you're a floor person. And they go, oh, how did you know that? You just sort of get a gist of who the people are. And, that kind of anticipatory conversation with the person really would be a great icebreaker and a great way to get them to have a good experience. When I sit at a conference and often I'd be you're either at the top of the escalator or the bottom of the escalator, and you see people coming towards you. And it's, again, like I say, a game in my head I play. It's like, I wonder what they're going to want to know about. Oh, I think they're going to want to know about this. And, and if you're right, it's like, oh, this is fun. So I think that expertise is something that is similarly the people who run their events. Your community, your volunteers, your customer. So having the company that you're working with also experience that with you, and then they get to know your customer, your community, your organization has great value.
And I think you're also the information center. Like pointing people, sort of knowing what the agenda is and being able to fill people in on that. It's I think it's valuable to everyone. Yeah.
And that's why when I said about having, your volunteers be your ambassadors of your event, the paid person at the box office who can do the technical things in the sense of, utilizing the system, issuing the ticket, they can run through that quite quickly. it's the chatting with the ambassador of the event, a little bit off to the side, which again enhances the customer experience but doesn't slow down the flow.
It's like having your box office run by the Psychic Friends Network. It's just, you already know, you already know all the answers. But that's a really important, and that's been a theme of supply and demand throughout. It's just the importance of those partnerships and having opportunities for that at every level. That's even one of the things I do on the stilts, for instance, is answering questions, letting people know where to go, and problem solving on the fly. Having those partners there are hugely important for the run of your event.
Even something as simple as, I'm looking for XYZ vendor. It's like, oh, right, they're, yes, they're here. They're, 4 stalls down, or whatever your conversation might be. But getting a good gist of where you are is really important. And for me and for Ticketpro, we really take that seriously. Like, we want you to be as successful as you can be. And however we can help you achieve that is our goal. Whether it's involving ticketing or not, we really want that to happen. So thanks, Jay. So the question becomes, how do you choose a ticketing system? So there are features that are important as individual organizations. So, what is important to you may not be as important to the next organization, but this is a listing of things that I believe you should consider when you're choosing a system. First and foremost, client and customer experience. Is the system user-friendly? Is the assistance user-friendly? Is there support options? All of those things, to me, is one of the biggest pieces of selecting your system. And then then it goes down from there in the sense of, is it mobile? Is it mobile in the sense that it's responsive to different devices, as well as mobile in the sense of how can you, set up an on-the-fly box office, 2 weeks out of your event at the local grocery store and still collect customer data, as opposed to just hard ticket printing and selling at the those things are considered. How customizable is it? Is it going to hold your brand as well as information about the system that you're using? So, there's different options. You can have something that's networked like Ticketpro is, that, sells across Canada, and we have our own website where people can purchase from, but as well from your own site. Or is it something that you're going to be purchasing at what they call more of an in-house or a white label system? Those things to consider. What's your access control like? How is your gate going to work? How is your ticket scanning going to work? All that kind of thing. Reporting, that's another huge thing, especially if you're wanting to apply for grants and things like that. How's the reporting working? How customizable is it? Can you get the data that you need for grants, or for your auditors, or for your board, etc.? Next slide.
Yeah. And I'm just going to pause there for 1 second, if you don't mind. I believe Dave had a question.
Yeah, and I'm going back to what I call the boilerplate. Maybe that's the wrong name of it, but on your ticket system, or on your hard ticket or your E-line ticket, you quite often have your return policy, cancellation policy, your weather policies. Some people I know try to slide in there, by purchasing this ticket gives us the right to use your photo for marketing purposes. Is that something that would get through a legal test? I'm just wondering, because I've heard more than one organization that tries to slide that in on a ticket.
A photo, you said?
Yeah, like if you're taking pictures for marketing purposes, does having a disclaimer on your ticket that, you may be capturing photos throughout the course of your event that may be used for marketing purposes?
Honestly, I don't know. I know of some organizations that have put it in their, it's not on the ticket per se, but it's in the terms and conditions of purchasing. Like, it's a separate thing outside of, like, it's what that organization has wanted people to acknowledge. And they also have it on their website. I haven't seen it per se. I've seen it in terms and conditions when you give your information, and I can tell you that 99% of the people never read that information.
Right.
And I don't know, I would think that they would also have that stated on site when people enter. By entering this, your photo may be taken for, marketing purposes.
Yeah.
I honestly, I don't know the answer to your question per se.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a safer policy to get people to sign off when you take a picture, but I know quite a few people that just, whether it's like you said on their website or on their ticket, do have some sort of clause in there that we may be filming or capturing this or that, and they believe that that's enough. I just wondered how it would stand up legally and if you've come across it before.
I don't know.
Okay, thanks.
That would be, yeah. And just to comment on that as well, again, this is in no way legal advice, but I have seen that done on site on like A-frames throughout a site, for instance, is that, if you were here on site at the event, your photo may be taken and used. But yeah, I don't know how well that would hold up.
Yeah, the only thing I can see it being an issue if, you don't have pictures of children, that's where I could see the public being a little bit more apprehensive about that they would not want their kids' photos being taken, but I don't know the answer. And I think that the ticketing policy, as far as, sharing, we always state that, the transaction is between Ticketpro and the customer, and that we share your data to our, our clients for their purposes. And we don't communicate with people unless we've received permission to do so. And the same is to apply to our clients. So, that data is never sold. It's never distributed. It's only valid to the event organizer themselves. That, I think, needs to be very clear to the public.
Yeah, which is very important. I think everyone's very aware now of how their personal data is used, where it's getting sent. So a consumer being aware of that is, I'm sure, very important.
And that's what the next point is: origin of the company. Where do servers lie? That's something to consider when you're choosing a ticketing system. What laws are they governed by? So, for example, Ticketpro is in Canada. Our servers are in Canada. Your data is housed in Canada. That isn't necessarily the case with every ticketing company who are working in Canada. So that's something to consider. And the reputation of your company is important. Again, we experienced in 2020 when ticketing companies walked away with organizations' funds, and the customer was not refunded. And that's something to consider is where is your money, and do you have access to it, and how safe is it, how trustworthy are the people. And then you want to look at your implementation and setup. How does it work? What is the lead time? What's the ongoing support and service? What other features do they have that are going to benefit you, like the distribution and marketing of your event? And then back to pricing again. Pricing, I mean, people often say, oh, that's all great, but what is it going to cost us? And you do get what you pay for, and you have to look at that. Just because it's less expensive doesn't mean to say it has what you need, and you haven't considered all those other features. And then the growth of your system. Does it have growth potential? Is it looking into the future? It may have a whole ton of elements that you don't need right now, but that they're there, so that when your organization is on that path of growth, then it's there to help you. Kyle, you were going to say something?
Yeah, so sorry. you jumped slides, and I was going to give a second. So in terms of pricing, I don't know if you were going to get to this at a later slide. I can't remember. But what can people generally expect in terms of pricing?
Why don't we go to that slide, Jay? Next one. The next one.
Oh, sorry. I jumped ahead a slide. That's what.
That's okay. It's all right. 2 down now, I think. There. So pricing, you're paying for when you purchase it, or when you're using a ticketing system, they have invested time and money in developing the system. So, you're paying for that technology and you're paying for that development. But the other things of, the cost of doing business is back to reporting. What kind of reporting are you getting? How accessible is it? Can you pull out the information that you need? Is it have some, it's universal reporting, for example, but is there something specific that is valuable to you? Is there customization of that? What's the data? How is it organized? How accessible is it? For example, when you're purchasing at the gate, you may not collect all that data for the customer because, you're just trying to get them in the door. But that option needs to exist should you want to be able to do that. Should you want to gather email addresses when they're purchasing. We've done events where we only ask them their postal code because we know that will help with granting for future. They need that. They need to show the radius of where people are coming from to get some, tourism granting or whatever, even just knowing where your advertising worked. What's the support and service? That's the other thing that's often, people go, oh, well, they're less expensive or it's all included. Well, you find out what's included is not really what you need. You want to be able to, your event is, I'm making it up, but, you have a headliner that's starting at 9:00 and, there's an issue. I was doing an event and a storm came through and we had to, shut it down and, ensure that people didn't travel now because in a half an hour the show was supposed to start and, there were still people to arrive and we wanted to get out there right away that don't come now because it's not happening. So what kind of support do you have, on non-business hours? And if you want to make a change, you want to put out a promotion right away, do you have support to do that? And back to security and compliance. How compliant is that company? Are they following, the PCI compliance and things like that to ensure that the data is encrypted, that the credit card information, is safe, things like that. That's important to, your organization, but to your customer. What's the marketing analytics that the company is going to support you on? And again, back to expertise. How many things have they done? Can they perhaps, you may have this great idea and they can say, that's wonderful. In our experience, this has been some of the, the pitfalls to think about if you want to use that idea. And again, it's not to dissuade anybody, but it may just bring to light some of those things to consider. You want to do. Example, yesterday, I was working at an event and they wanted to do if kids come in with donations to the food bank, then they could come in free. Well, that's great. But did you think about what's happening with that food when it arrives? Do you have someone who's looking after it and is going to ensure that it gets to, to the food bank? Do you want to have advanced sales if people have already purchased a ticket for their kid and now they find out if they bring food, the kid gets in free? What's the process then? Should we put it in advance so that if you buy, an adult and a child's ticket and you bring food, now you can get it at, at the 50% off or buy two tickets for one, all those kinds of things. Like think about what you want to do and how are we going to work around to make it happen? And I think that having that expertise and someone to bounce ideas off of is important too, so that they can say, that's a great idea. I really want to do this. Here's a suggestion on how this could work, or wow, I've never even thought of that. Let me share that with 3 other clients because I know they would benefit from those ideas as well.
Absolutely. And I just quickly want to echo the importance of that reporting information as well, especially if your organization relies on grants. In the past, you've had to go out with teams to do surveys and, you're collecting maybe a small bit of sample data, but having accurate representation of where people are actually coming from, or where you may want to invest those marketing dollars to get more people traveling in. It's just the return on investment is huge.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's what people, again, back to how we've always done it. People don't always think about what that might mean now, because the competition of the dollar is so great. People are being, yes, as much as people say they want to be out and doing, back to normal, which is great. A, are they actually going to? And B, if they do, I think they're being more discerning on where they're actually spending their money. I sit on a committee of regional presenting networks, and one of the thoughts was, people have now invested a lot of their funds into, streaming platforms. They have they have Netflix, they have, BritBox, they have Apple, all those things, and their income now is devoted to those, monthly subscriptions. So now when they are choosing an event to buy, they're being they're pickier about what they're going to do, because now their money is being spent in a different way. So that advanced sale has even a greater importance, because people can change their mind like the wind, and the circumstances of life is changing like the wind. So getting that advanced sale has even greater importance now. So back to the thinking of your price of your ticket, what you need to get needs to be your starting point, and moving out from there. So that's another way of thinking, because people always think of, well, how am I going to discount in order to get advanced sales? Now to think about it, the reverse is, my starting point is now my first price. That's what I need to get. And now I'm going to go up from there. So the discount has not really happened in the organization's point of view, but it looks like it has to the customer.
And we've got about 8 minutes left, but we'll jump to Debbie's question before to getting to the next slide.
Just real quickly, a lot of people either absorb the cost of the ticketing, or they charge it back to the customer. Is there a norm for that? Like, do people start charging their clients now their patronage, or are they absorbing it, or is it a mix of both?
It's kind of a mix of both. And I think it's the way you look at it. To a customer point of view, they like to know what the price is and not have a surprise at the end. So, it's all great to say, advertise the lowest price and say it's $20 plus tax and fees. Well, that sounds great until you go to check out and you see that your price now is $30. So the customer, in their mind, and this is, again, it's psychology, it depends on your, how you've done it, and now how you're going to do it could make this choice for you. But it's getting that surprise at the end can be a, back to your customer experience, a poor experience to that customer. If you just said it's $30, all tax and fees included, and that's what you're advertising it at, does that give it a better impression to the customer? And most organizations will choose what works better for them, but you have to think of yourself as a consumer and say, okay, so if I heard it's $20 and then had to pay $30 in the end, or if I heard it $30, would I be deterred from buying because now it's $30? I don't know the answers, because everybody is different. If you look at most clients choose to add the fees on top of what they obviously need to get. So if you need to get $20 out of your ticket and your customer's going to pay $25, then that's where your mind goes, is that I know that I have to add that on. To say that it's coming out of, if you want to cover more costs from the ticket buyer, you can make your price, $27, of which $2 is to be used towards credit card fees. It's not really answering your question, Debbie, I don't think, but every organization is different. And explaining to the customer, often they don't need to know the details, they just need to know the total.
That's all I wanted to know is...
Sorry, it's a long explanation.
Okay.
It's okay. So I think we'll jump to the next slide.
I don't think we need to go through any of the other slides, because they're all about marketing and analysis and stuff. The important thing is to understand what the ticketing company is going to do to support you. Do they have analytics that they can provide to you? Is there a way for your Google Analytics to be embedded, or your Facebook pixels to be embedded in the purchase process, so you're learning that data? Do they offer any other marketing support? Do they have their own newsletter that they send out and can include your events? Do they have web banners on their site, or a way to do affiliate codes so you can provide your sponsors or something with the purchase process, so that then you know the tracking of where the customer comes from? All of those things are to be considered.
Oh, that's great. And again, I just want to remind everyone, if you do have a question, feel free to raise your hand or put it in the chat, because we do have a few minutes left. I know I have one more question that I wanted to get to is, if I'm hosting an event that doesn't actually charge a fee, there's no cost for entry, is there a reason why I would maybe still want to use a ticketing system for the event?
I would. For one thing, is you're learning data. And I think that, municipalities, for example, host a lot of free events. That's their mandate within their community, to make it accessible to all. If people have to reserve a ticket or buy a ticket at $0, that helps them learn who their customer is. So if that event happens to become a paid event in the future, because that's the only way it's going to run, is if there's a cost associated to the customer, or they're going to host other things, knowing who that customer is has great value. And if for you needed to inform them that the event isn't happening, or there's contact tracing that may or may not be required, all of those things, getting that data is valuable. Anytime you can get information about who's attending, it has value for future use.
And you did, and Debbie, I think that you maybe have another question, and okay. One more quick thing then is say, like you said, for a municipality that hosts many events, is there something that if they're booking you or booking you as a ticketing service for one event, is there a way to package in multiple events? Or
100%. And we also, we're a volume-based business. So the more volume we have, the better your pricing, because we do the work once to have return on that investment at the time. So, we absolutely do, multiple pricing, depending on what you're wanting to do. So just because you use this for one event, that doesn't preclude you from using us for all your events. And in fact, it's a benefit to you, because now you'll learn who your customer is for multiple things. And you can do, lots of loyalty programming, or a membership basis. You purchase 6 events with us, or you register for 6 events. We'd love to, reward you for that experience.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you've maybe seen the Ticket Pro logo when you buy tickets for the conference or for other things with FEO. But for anyone who maybe doesn't know yet, where can they go to find more information and get in touch with you?
Oh, well, it's Ticketpro.ca is our transactional website. Ticketprocanada.ca is the information about the system itself. And at Ticketpro.ca is my email address. I'd love to hear from all of you. And if you have further questions, by all means, reach out anytime. If you'd like to discuss your event, I will be happy to assist anybody in any way. So please reach out.
That's great. And Anne, again, thank you so much for joining us this week. I know I learned a lot. And at this point, I'm going to welcome Debbie in, because I think she might be talking about what's coming up next week and for the next month. So Debbie, feel free to jump in.
Thanks again. Okay, thanks, Kyle. And thank you, Anne and Kyle, for doing this for Tuesday Talks with FEO. So next week, so the month of March is our virtual conference, our Energize virtual conference. And Tuesday Talks is part of that. So if you haven't purchased your tickets, your registration, we won't be having it free for that month. It's all included into the month. So next week we have Indigenous tourism, talking about how to include the Indigenous community into your event and festival. The week after, we're going to be talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. The fourth one is about the LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce and the Rainbow Project. And then the last one will be workplace safety and workplace safety, talking about mental health in the event world. So not only for yourself, but what can we look at and what can we anticipate as you run your festivals and we come back together. So that's what Tuesday Talks is going to look like. Dave has his own roster on Thursdays. It's a jam-packed, really great opportunity for you to learn more. So that's it. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Kyle, again. Thank you, Anne, and look forward to seeing you in March. And then again, we'll resume in April. That's it.
Thank you, everyone, very much.
Thanks so much. Have a great week.